Go outside and tear apart that illegitimate son for me. After being freed by him, the monsters roared wildly. On this side, Sigrun was struggling hard to bring down the monsters. Looking at the bloody monster's corpse lying on the ground, she exclaimed, "The monster was violent. The man was covered in blood." She drew her sword out of the monster, thinking if this thing was released, the casualties would be significant. Fiona's quick and decisive judgment was right. Suddenly, a guard rushed in from outside, panting and reporting urgently, "Your Highness, many monsters are approaching." Fiona, not knowing where she came from, came over and saw Sigrun and the guards surrounded by monsters. She thought it was indeed wise to come and check the situation like this. Someone must have released the monsters. Stay calm and signal everyone to take up arms. Wipe them all out. Don't let a single one remain. The fierce monsters looked at the standing people hungrily, growling terrifyingly. He didn't notice behind him the monster he had killed earlier. Suddenly revived, opened its mouth wide and attacked him. He didn't have time to react, standing still, thinking it was still alive. Seeing this, she quickly raised her hand and used her magic, releasing a blue beam toward the monsters, coordinating with him to eliminate those monsters. A loud bang sounded, and the monsters gradually fell down, making the guards gape in amazement and silently admire. Indeed, she was the Winter Protector. She walked beside him, both looking very outstanding, radiating a sparkling aura. She bent down to look at the monster lying on the floor and said, "This thing looks like a type of monster. Its neck must be cut off. Let me help eliminate the other monsters too." Worried he might be in danger, she said, "I'll do it with the night team." She looked up and smiled, replying, "But doing it with me would be better." He also smiled at her, bending down to place his sword behind his head teasingly. "If you worry about me like that, kiss these lips a little." She frowned and replied irritably, "Lately you've been enjoying life too much, huh?" Then lightly tapped his head, saying, "Come on, let's go." While they were teasing each other, the guard hurriedly came to report, "Miss, you have to come here. Finally, the arena owner was caught." She went ahead while Duke Aaron, wearing a hooded cloak, followed behind and approached the arena owner. His hands were tied. He looked up at her, thinking she was a slender girl. Is she the one responsible for this whole incident? She stepped forward to speak first. "Hello, Cruz," he looked at her. His voice was hoarse. Finally, someone spoke clearly. Then he paused for a moment. He threatened the beautiful lady. "If you treat me this way, you will definitely regret it later." She coldly asked why. He smirked, thinking she was naive. "I should scare you a little," then continued. "I'm just telling you this special thing. Behind me are many extremely terrifying figures supporting me. Do you know? Like Baron Darren, Count Ohel, and even Count Isaac Aaron." She kept diligently taking full notes, all the names he mentioned, then sighed. "They are all neutral parties. Looks like thanks to this, the losses this year will be avoided." She worried about those people, thinking all of them must have been completely drained financially. Then he continued speaking. "Also, there is a noble figure whose identity I dare not mention. Let me go, let me go. I will pretend nothing happened. I hope the lady here makes a wise choice." Suddenly there was a loud shout outside. The noisy shouting of the crown prince after being caught. He kept struggling and yelling, "Let me go! Do you know who I am?" Two guards on either side kept restraining him. One reported, "There is one more." He was found inside the arena but still refuses to stop yelling, "Let me go! In this empire I am not allowed." They did not let him finish. She crossed her arms and asked, "What empire?" He leaned toward her, trying to break free from the two guards. He shouted, "You don't need to know." She pretended not to know he was AI, mocking, "Look, this one just committed another act of disrespect." He was forced to kneel by two guards behind him, grinding his teeth in anger. Footsteps approached. A man appeared behind him, saying, "Looks like things here are settled now." He trembled all over, stammering, shouting loudly, "You damn bat monster, I will definitely kill you." His eyes were cold as he pretended to ask, "Do you know me?" The prisoner angrily shouted back. The bastard tried to stand, but was kicked hard in the back by the man who shouted, "You dare yell at the prince?" The man continued, "I'm curious who dares to be so bold. Now let's see the identity of this unknown criminal." He stomped hard on the prisoner's back, saying he would remove his mask. The prisoner clenched his fists in fear, thinking, No, this can't happen." The man ordered the guards to remove the mask. The crown prince glared and shouted at the madman after seeing the face clearly. He feigned surprise with a sarcastic tone. Wow, I had no idea at all. Why is he here? The prince was devastated, thinking, now I'm finished. News of the crown prince caught red-handed. At the illegal arena spread instantly. Everywhere in the upper class was buzzing with gossip. Rumors said the emperor was furious after hearing the news. At the royal palace right now, the emperor was clearly angry, shouting, "How dare you stain the royal honor?" The crown prince knelt on one knee below, facing the emperor's anger. He trembled and stammered, "Father, your majesty, I was trapped by that bastard Sigrun." This only enraged the emperor more, who shouted, "I don't want to hear from this stupid son anymore." The crown prince stammered, but the emperor didn't let him say another foolish word. "I don't want to see your face anymore. You are banned from appearing in the upper class for now. Behave obediently in the palace." The crown prince obeyed, dragging his feet out, muttering, "All of this is that bastard's fault." His face was tear-streaked and pitiful, continuing, "I will definitely kill you." His figure staggered and disappeared. Scene changed to Libya holding Fiona's hand, saying, "Why is the lady so modest?" Fiona was lost in memories after the last illegal arena event. Thanks to that, Libya was able to refuse the marriage proposal, without any trouble. The upper class also showed sympathy and agreement. Libya's situation was different from what people imagined. She smiled brightly like a flower and said, "For now, I will play the role of a pitiful young lady." Fiona looked at her helplessly, thinking, such a carefree personality. Then she thought of someone else. Aaron seemed very satisfied too. That's just like Aaron. Confiscated a huge amount of assets from countless nobles. What was going on in Fiona's head, imagining the happy face of Marquis Clovis? When holding that pile of gold coins, that guy usually just smiled and talked fake. Only when holding money did he smile sincerely. He even told her, "Thank you, young lady," as if that was enough for me to no longer worry about finances. After a while, returning to the present, Libya took a fan to cover her mouth and quietly asked her, "But young lady, are you okay?" She suspiciously asked what was going on. Libya continued to answer. After that incident, the prince's reputation skyrocketed. "Look, isn't it obvious now?" After saying that, she even signaled Fiona to look towards Sigrun surrounded by a group of noble young ladies, but Prince Sigrun's face looked painfully distressed. "Why does this kind of pain never fall on me?" she said again. Libya at this moment turned on her phone. She was eavesdropping and asked the two if they were dating, and if that was okay. Fiona, out of breath, replied, Probably okay?" making Libya surprised. "Oh wow, she's so relaxed." Time fast-forwarded a few hours later. Only Fiona and Sigrun were walking together in the flower garden. Fiona spoke. "Sigrun, hey, you were the one the girls were crowding around earlier, right? Who else would make such a gloomy face?" "It must be me," he replied with a blank expression. "I'm emotionless, okay?" she gasped, thinking he imagined himself, annoyed. "I'm not a kid anymore to get jealous over everything." Then he said, "Forget about that. Have you contacted Aben?" Changing the subject, she forgot and replied, I just got a letter yesterday." She recounted the content of Aben's letter. Aben wrote, "I heard you're investigating the truth behind the death. Even if it's my child, it will be difficult. The work in Halo keeps me busy, so I probably can't return for now. Although I cannot stop you, I will send a hybrid dog to help you in the Dead Land." He wondered about the hybrid dog, and she replied she wasn't sure what it meant, but the next line surprised her. This time, "Well done, I'm proud of you." He suddenly said, "I wish Abe would come back soon." She teased him, "Oh my, do you miss him already?" He acted like a child being scolded, pouting, "I need Aben." "Then those weird guys won't be lurking around you," she replied helplessly. True. The scene changed to Libya and Clovis, who were having a silent war with each other, though both wore bright smiles. The atmosphere crackled with countless electric sparks. This atmosphere made Fiona, caught in the middle, suffer as Marquis Clovis opened his mouth. "I don't see what business she has with Lady Libya," Clovis said. Libya retorted, "Not at all." Lady Fiona was busy. At this moment, Fiona turned to Libya and signaled, "Lady Libya, I'm fine." In her mind, she thought if she could escape now, the Marquis would still find her anyway. Libya understood her meaning and said, "If so, be careful, young lady." She politely replied, "Yes." Now only Marquis Clovis and Fiona remained. He said, "I will be straightforward, young lady. Are you really human? But honestly, because of matters related to darkness, I have some doubts about your true identity," he said with some suspicion in his heart. but outwardly smiled and said, "I don't understand why you ask me such a question." He laughed and replied, "I can't exactly tell the reason to the person I'm suspicious of, right, young lady?" Then without waiting for her answer, he turned and continued, "Now I will take your silence as the answer." She helplessly said, "Hey, don't just assume like that." However, he turned back, smiled at her and said, "I apologize if that question made you uncomfortable. I didn't mean that, young lady. Please forgive me." When Marquis Clovis left, she was still stunned and suddenly thought, nonsense. Could it be that guy knew she wasn't the real Fiona? She thought, and then dismissed her silly hypothesis. No way he could know that. Thinking back and forth. If a question has no answer, there's no point in dwelling on it. At this moment, she was tossing on the bed with some letters. She picked up one letter. Her expression gradually became serious. Let's get to work. Official documents come slowly. Just then someone arrived at the right time. She read for a while, her face becoming more solemn, thinking the situation was more serious than she thought. The letter stated that the Deadland recently appeared on a much larger scale than before. In some areas were once villages causing casualties. The letter said the Deadland has recently appeared on a larger scale than before. Moreover, some areas were once villages, so there have been casualties. She continued reading while thinking silently. Even around the area, many monsters have become berserk. So other areas are also facing difficulties, really. She couldn't help but imagine the image of people struggling to fight against those rampaging monsters. After thinking for a while, she raised her spirit and made a firm decision. Hong 7 has requested, so it can't be refused. I have to work hard to help many people. Suddenly, she thought of someone. It seemed Eunice would also come. As the creator, I must set an example, lost in thought when a knock on the door sounded. A bodyguard came in and said, "Miss, sorry to disturb your lord's rest," she heard and replied. "It's okay, what's the matter?" The bodyguard continued. "Someone, not sure if a guest or an intruder, has come here. Miss, you need to go and assess." She was a bit surprised by what the bodyguard said, stepping outside when another servant handed her a handwritten letter from Aben. The content was very brief. "If you don't know, ask Sigrun." She looked at the letter from the Duke and thought, what the heck is this vague message? She turned to instruct the servant to deliver the message to the prince's palace immediately and tell him someone had arrived. The servant replied, "Yes, ma'am," then left. She walked on, still wondering who it could be. Stepping into the reception hall, she saw a large man dressed simply, wearing a hood. When he saw her arrive, he asked if she was Fiona Halo, and she was full of suspicion, wondering who this person was. Back then, she stepped in and saw the stranger, her heart full of doubt. The man noticed her arrival, took off his hood, revealing a rugged face with a scar on his eyebrow. Who is this, she wondered. He stood up without greeting and just started talking. "Let's talk slowly. I've been waiting a long time for you," she evaluated the man in front of her. He was really tall. Then she introduced herself. "I'm Fiona Halo," and asked him, "Who are you?" He seemed a bit surprised, and asked back, "You don't know me?" She was annoyed inside, thinking, why does he talk nonsense and then ask again, "Please reveal your identity." He continued asking if she really didn't know. She said irritably, "Because I don't know. That's why I asked you to introduce yourself." Thinking to herself, she really couldn't stand this rude guy. Then suddenly the words from Avon's letter appeared in her mind. "Instead, I will send a hunting dog to help you with the matter in the Deadland." She softly said, "Ah," then asked, "Could you be that hunting dog?" He got angry at her question. "What? That Aben guy, what kind of identity did he introduce me as?" he muttered. She quietly said to herself, "Dog or not, at least dogs are cuter than you." Then suddenly wondered why this crude man came here. At that moment, he finally said his name was Gwento. "I'm Gwento." "You must have heard this name before." The information struck her like a lightning bolt, leaving her stunned for a moment. "Ah, I remember now, the character from the principal called the Dragon King, though the chance of appearing is low." Frankly, she was a minor character, not mentioned much in the principal. This person played the role of Eunice's bodyguard for a short time. Of course it was a plot point far ahead, but, unexpectedly, she met Gwento at this moment. He plopped down on a chair, his tone becoming more normal. "Have we met before?" He replied, "No, just heard rumors, unfortunately." "But it seemed the miss knew nothing about him," she answered. "I'm not one to pay attention to rumors," he casually replied. "Maybe so." Then the door burst open and Sigrun ran in. He was panting heavily, calling Fiona. She was a bit surprised. Sigrun, why are you sweating so much? Did you run here? Sigrun answered. That weird name came here. Gwento joked. You look pretty good, Sigrun. Sigrun, expressionless, asked Gwento. Why are you here? She was a bit curious and asked if the two knew each other. Sigrun replied. A little, ignoring the two. Fiona and Gwento just said. Anyway, the Duke also threatened and forced me to come here. Miss, do you still need me? If not, I'll go back. She didn't hesitate and said, No, of course not. Looking at him, he seemed useful. Then he asked, What are we doing here? She looked at Sigrun and replied, This time we will go to the Deadland in the palace. If possible, bring back the knights and soldiers of Halo. Then we can create a breach in the guard post, he asked again. Wait, the Deadland? Why go there? She said. I'll explain later. Now is not the time to worry about. That he stared at her without speaking. She had no idea at this moment. Unexpectedly, Sigrun registered for the position of Chief of Staff of the division. Sigrun was currently on a march. To the Deadland at this time, Fiona spoke up, although she knew he cared deeply about her. But she didn't expect him to go this far. Gwento also got involved, truly the power of love. By the way, he looked at Fiona and said, Doesn't she have a strong rear force? Then she turned to Gwento and said, With me as the king among mercenaries. What else is there? He scratched his head and replied, I'm only here to protect you, Fiona thought silently. He's more honest than I thought, she continued to ask suddenly. I'm a bit curious, Gwento. Can I ask how the Duke threatened you? He replied, Nothing special. I once killed a noble. And the Duke promised to keep it secret for me. She wondered what Gwento said next. The truth is that filthy noble kidnapped children and women, then committed horrible depraved acts. He made the victims want to commit suicide, but anyway, I ended his life before letting the victims die, she asked. Does that really need the Duke to keep it secret? He answered yes. Now seeing her reaction, it's normal, really? She said, Could it be that this choice of yours was forced under someone else's control? Really, he said incoherently. I understand why Sigrun is so worried about you. Then the resting place, halfway the Viscount Aiden's mansion. At this time, Viscount Aiden and his wife warmly welcomed Sigrun's group. Please come in, it's truly an honor for me. When receiving the prince's hospitality, Lady Aiden also turned to introduce her two daughters to the prince. These are our daughters. The two young ladies bowed respectfully to Sigrun. Sigrun, expressionless, did not respond. Fiona spoke up instead today. Sorry to trouble you all. She also looked at the two young ladies thinking, Wow, these young ladies are the same age as me, Viscount, Aiden continued. Well, everyone must be tired. We will lead you to your rooms this way after a tiring day of marching. Sigrun just lay down in the Viscount Aiden's arranged room, he said to himself. Today, I haven't even said a word to Fiona. Remembering her lovely appearance, he couldn't sit still. He stood up thinking, I must go and kiss her first. Just as he opened the door, he heard an exclamation. Oh my God, Your Highness, it's so late. Where have you been? It turned out to be one of Aiden's two daughters. The girl wore a light nightgown hugging her upper body, revealing a graceful figure. Facing a beautiful girl standing at his door at night like this, Sigrun coldly asked the Viscount's daughter, What's the matter? She spoke, Your Highness, just as she rushed into him. Sigrun hugged him tightly, which surprised him a bit. She continued in a charming voice. Your Highness, may I stay by your side tonight? Sigrun's face immediately darkened outside Sigrun's room. The dim light made it impossible to see his face. At this moment, he calmly spoke, Young lady. If your father comes here, please go back. The young lady still held him tightly without letting go and said, No, it's all my idea, Your Highness. Then she finally let go of Sigrun and said shyly, I actually feel a bit embarrassed. Now she stood creating some distance, revealing her graceful figure, trying to catch Sigrun's attention. Isn't that quite good? He immediately answered the young lady's question. No, it's not good, despite her chattering all this time. Wherever I go, I've never been rejected here. Sigrun was still absent-minded, thinking besides Fiona, other girls mean nothing. Looking at the girl in front of him, he thought truly a headache. Honestly, sending an assassin would be better. I'd just chop her in half. Fiona would nag even more. Then his head pictured Fiona, pointing at him, telling Sigrun, You have to behave properly with the young ladies. He clicked his tongue, then said, If the young lady doesn't leave, then I will go, saying that he left at once. She called after him, Wait a moment, Your Highness, over here. Fiona loudly asked, What is she trying to seduce you with her body? Ha ha, oh my God. It seems our prince is quite outstanding. He wasn't happy and said I knew it would be like this, but she didn't understand his meaning and asked again. Why am I laughing so hard? It annoys you. He looked helpless and asked again. So interesting. Ha, she kept laughing and said, Of course, who would think that little kid has grown up like this? Suddenly she hiccuped. Then continuously hiccuping, she grimaced and said, I laughed too hard, so I got punished with hiccups. He also cheerfully said, That's right. Then he picked up a cup of tea and handed it to her, saying, Here, drink slowly. While she was drinking, he rubbed her back with his hand. She responded with a thank you. Unable to stop, she spoke while still hiccuping, saying, Hiccups get better when startled, so scare me, Sigrun. He immediately asked, Really? I can do anything, right? She no longer cared about what he said, hiccuping and telling him to hurry. Hurry up, he replied. Then he put his finger on her lips and gently rubbed, making her embarrassed. He asked, How about this? She was silent for a moment, then answered, Don't prolong the time. Sigrun was still dating but kept kissing, which was a bit awkward. Before she finished speaking, he lunged forward and felt her lips with his. She couldn't react in time, only able to open her eyes wide to accept his kiss. Both of them wrapped around each other like that. Her heart at this moment was like a runaway deer, continuously jumping as he kissed her. In her heart, she cried out that she was having trouble breathing. Then he lowered himself and stroked a lock of her hair while kissing it. Sorry, Fiona. But at this moment, she felt like prey caught by a predator. Just then, he slightly curled his lips in satisfaction. I intended only to kiss, but somehow it escalated. She made an angry face and scolded. If you go further, you'll get beaten, he calmly replied. I'm also uncomfortable having to endure more, so I won't go further. Then he looked at her, and couldn't help but bury his face and lightly kiss her shoulder, making her blush and sternly call out, Sigrun, stop being so shameless, he replied. Doing this will stop the hiccups, so that's why I do it. Now go to sleep. Fiona from a corner heard the door close. Sigrun had left, leaving Fiona confused as she collapsed onto a sofa. Her finger unconsciously touched her lips, silently saying she didn't understand why, but thinking about it, she stopped. Only the sound of her heart pounding wildly remained. Elsewhere outside, it was raining heavily. A letter was sent. Today there was a tea party held in the greenhouse. It turned out Eunice was talking to herself, wondering if she could meet her there at the tea party, Miss Fiona Halo. The night sky outside was raining like a shower. Fiona was standing, leaning against the window, holding a beautiful and exquisite invitation card. She read the content of the invitation. I would like to invite the young lady to attend the tea party at the greenhouse this afternoon. Hoping the young lady can spare some time to attend, the young lady of the aid entitled Fiona leaned back, looking at the sender's name below. She frowned, wondering if this person was the one from yesterday, who caused trouble with Sigrun. Fiona placed the invitation near her lips thoughtfully. Should I go to the tea party? Since it's organized by such a person, she silently thought, there's no reason for me to care at all. The one at fault is over there, but maybe she could meet Eunice at the tea party. After thinking it through, Fiona said to the servant, bowing in front, Please convey my acceptance of the invitation. I am very pleased to accept this invitation. The time for the tea party at the greenhouse has arrived. Fiona followed the maid, her steps light along the hallway. Seeing the person ahead also walking, Fiona happily called, Miss Eunice. Opposite her, the beautiful blonde girl also smiled brightly in response to Fiona. Miss Fiona. Fiona looked at the radiant beautiful girl in front and asked, Miss Eunice was also invited? Eunice showed a slight regret and gently replied, Yes, although accompanying Miss Fiona, we rarely get to see each other. Fiona smiled happily because I rode a horse here. Eunice heard that and was a bit embarrassed. She raised her hands to hug her blushing cheeks, then shyly, Anyway, miss, come with me in the carriage. Sitting alone in the carriage is boring. Fiona glanced at Aarons and smiled softly. She silently thought about it. Since she was surrounded by knights and soldiers, she seemed lonely. The two girls walked and chatted happily, so before long they arrived at the door. Standing beside the door was a man in a vest who reached out to push the door open and politely invited them in. Please come in. This way is the greenhouse. The young lady is waiting inside. The door was opened. Before the two girls was a beautiful romantic scene with the green of plants and vibrant flowers, colors blooming in competition. A voice rang out, breaking the garden silence. Oh my! A girl pushed back hair from her ear and greeted, I am Miss Fiona. Miss Eunice. Pushing back the strands of hair stuck to her ear, then greeting, I am Miss Fiona, Miss Eunice. That girl smiled and continued, Thank you all for accepting my invitation. I have been waiting for you. Fiona looked at the face of the girl speaking. In her heart she admired, wow, truly a beauty like that, and yet she threw herself at Sigrun, huh? Fiona and Eunice together approached the table in the garden. The girl just now acted like a hostess welcoming guests. Please, sit down. Fiona and Eunice slowly sat down and gently said in unison, "Yes, thank you to the host of this tea party," said the girl whom Fiona had just praised highly, Miss Hitler-Aden. Hitler looked at the two girls who had just sat down, smiled, and gestured toward a young lady sitting beside her. "Let me introduce. This is a young lady from the neighboring region." Beside Hitler sat another young lady who also smiled. "It's an honor to meet two renowned young ladies from afar," Fiona said politely as she glanced at them. "Yes, I hope everyone will help." The garden fell into a slightly unusual atmosphere as Fiona glanced quietly at Hitler. She thought to herself, the look in that gaze was somewhat unstable. Eunice smiled at Fiona and then asked, "I heard that Miss Halen is from the north?" Fiona gently replied. "That's right," Eunice continued. "You must have faced many difficulties, right?" "I heard that there are extremely brutal and cruel mages living there," Eunice said. Fiona did not deny what Eunice said. She calmly responded, "Wherever people live, it's the same everywhere." Though she appeared calm on the outside, inside Fiona was dissatisfied. "Oh my, that rumor has spread all the way here?" Hitler, sitting opposite, tapped her chin lightly and smiled, asking, "The rumor spread, so I said it. I heard the young lady's bloodline is somewhat special, right?" She paused, noticing Fiona's stunned expression, then continued, "Originally, she's not from Halen. As far as I know, she's sneered with a hint of contempt," Fiona said. "She's a bastard." Hitler's words were like an invisible gunshot, opening the door for a battle. The initially cheerful atmosphere was replaced by a suffocating discomfort. Clearly, Fiona smiled bitterly and spoke to break the tension. She said gently and calmly, "That's right, those words are not wrong. I am a bastard, and I have always known that clearly." Seeing Fiona smile, Hitler felt annoyed and thought, "She's laughing?" She spoke up, but the noble family would not let Hitler continue. Fiona immediately said, "Yes, that noble family had their assets confiscated for drug trafficking. I also coldly admitted it. I was the one who reported it," Hitler exclaimed in an unacceptable tone. "Oh my God, if it were me, I couldn't do that. No matter the reason, to betray one's own family," she sneered. "That's the act of a beast." Fiona cast a cold glare at her. At this moment, the suffocating silence again enveloped the garden. In response to Hitler's contemptuous words, Eunice angrily shouted, "Wait, wait!" But then a hand reached out to stop her anger. Eunice looked confusedly at Miss Fiona. Fiona didn't look at Eunice, but stared straight ahead. She said frankly, "All right, so what is it that you want to say?" Hitler sneered, "I mean, just take it easy. Even if you're lucky enough to be a Highland foster daughter, so what? Being a noble lady means you have to know your limits." A small noise rang in Fiona's ear, and she turned toward the source. Hitler was still rambling on, so she didn't hear anything. The young lady also didn't notice. At this moment, Fiona looked toward the slightly open door. Sigrun was leaning back against the door, listening to the conversation. A loud bang pulled Fiona's attention back. Hitler, seeing she was ignored, angrily slammed the table and continued, "Why is Miss Fiona looking away? Don't you see I'm talking? I still have a few more things to say to you, young lady. You're a guest staying at someone else's mansion, yet you go seducing His Highness. Yes, my maid saw everything and told me all about it." Last night she was babbling on when suddenly a lock of her hair fell out. Fiona remained indifferent. But one thing Miss Adele, the smart one, hasn't grasped yet. Hitler's face turned pale, eyes wide, and body shrank. Fiona continued, "Thanks to that person, I have strength and power. Both are in my hands." Then Fiona stood up, walked to the door, and pushed it open. An unexpected figure appeared. Hitler was shocked and trembling. "Your Highness the Prince? What is this about?" At this she blushed, turned away, and shrank her body. Fiona stepped beside Sigrun. She thought to herself, something must have happened last night, so now she can't even lift her head. Fiona placed a hand on Sigrun's chest. She turned to look at Hitler and said, "Miss Hitler-Aden, I will give you one last piece of advice." Then, to everyone's astonishment in the garden, she put her arms around Sigrun and pulled him close, unexpectedly placing a gentle kiss on Sigrun's lips. A light kiss ended to everyone's surprise. She hugged Sigrun and looked at Hyder provocatively. "Don't be greedy for other men's men." Fiona's boldness made Sigrun blush secretly in her heart. Fiona was smug at this moment, silently asserting that this person belonged to her, darling. Hyder was so angry his face turned red. She bit her lip, breathing heavily, then stood up, slammed the table, and spoke as if giving orders to return quickly, then hurriedly left. Another young lady called out, "Wait, young lady!" Hyder waited, but Hyder had already run away and was not heard. Fiona looked toward the door with some regret. Gone already. Better that way so she gives up. Fiona looked at Sigrun and softly said, That's right. Sigrun. Stop when she saw Sigrun. Covering her blushing face with her hand, she asked, What's wrong with you? Snap out of it, we did even more yesterday. Hearing that, Sigrun scratched his head. His face was as red as a ripe tomato, feeling embarrassed. My feelings and yours are different, Fiona said without paying much attention. Anyway, it was just a light kiss on the lips. Yesterday, Fiona was speaking but suddenly fell silent because she noticed something. Eunice next to her cleared her throat softly. Fiona was startled and turned to look. She panicked, thinking, That's right, young lady Eunice, the commoner. Eunice was still sitting on the chair, and Fiona's bold words made her face blush pink with embarrassment, and a little shy. Fiona looked at Eunice, who panicked, holding her head with both hands, eyes wildly darting. Eunice stood up abruptly, shyly shouting, Sorry, let me give you two some space. Fiona blushed, crying without tears. She waved her hand hurriedly. No, we'll go outside, she said, then quickly turned back and pulled Sigrun along. As they walked, she said, Let's go. Your Highness must prepare for tomorrow's march. Eunice was embarrassed, closing her eyes tightly, not daring to look anymore. The next day, somewhere under a clear blue sky, rolling mountains below, at the foot of the mountain, the lake surface was like a mirror reflecting gentle sunlight. On both sides of the lake were tall green trees. At this time, a group of people arrived with continuous noise. I have to rest. Amidst such a poetic scene, Fiona sat on a rock by the lakeside, helplessly covering her face and crying bitterly. It's over, I absolutely can't ride in a carriage with young lady Eunice. Sigrun picked up a small stone, playing with it in his hand, then looked at Fiona. It's not a big deal, Fiona shouted. To me, it is. Fiona helplessly thought to herself she had tried to get closer to test Eunice's strength, but in front of her, she threatened others, and even made a scene. Fiona hugged her legs. Recalling how yesterday she threatened Hilda and even kissed Sigrun, she hung her head sadly, not knowing how she appeared in her eyes. Sigrun stood in front of her, holding a stone and throwing it into the water. The sound of the stone skipping on the water echoed. He lightly grunted and asked her, Do you like her that much? Fiona answered firmly. She's cute, and since the tea party every time I meet her, she blushes. Hearing this, Sigrun crossed his arms and turned away. He said irritably, I don't know at all. Seeing Sigrun seemed annoyed and turned away, Fiona wondered what he was thinking. Jealous? Then, as if understanding, she stretched and breathed in the fresh air, thinking it made sense. If those two love each other, Eunice can be clear-headed and save the world. Otherwise, it probably won't work. This time, she wished she had some hint. Lost in her thoughts, a blonde girl nearby caught all her attention. Fiona hurriedly ran off and said to Sigrun, Sigrun, I'll be back soon. Sigrun looked confused as she ran away, asking, Where are you going? Fiona glanced back and said while running, To rescue an innocent girl. In a corner of the cool green forest, Eunice stood looking ahead into the forest. She silently admired. Good. Being alone is truly the most comfortable. She smiled happily, thinking, the parade was too crowded. So, she was a bit tired. She was lost in her own thoughts. Suddenly, a hand placed on Eunice's shoulder, startling her. She opened her eyes wide and turned to look. Two men's voices sounded. Young lady, what are you doing here? Let's go have some fun together. After speaking, they looked at her with lecherous smiles. Eunice was scared and struggled desperately to get away from them. Let me go. Two thugs, one bald, tall with a scarred face, the other brown-haired, shorter and thinner. The skinny one slapped Eunice's shoulder irritably. Hey, don't talk so much. Suddenly at that moment, a female voice called out from behind. Fiona angrily looked at them and coldly gave orders. She really was beautiful. You guys better let her go quickly. Over here, Eunice anxiously watched Miss Fiona. The bald thug laughed out loud. What the hell is she saying? The skinny thug stepped forward towards Fiona, praising her as he walked. She looks good too. Come on, girl, come over here. On this side, Fiona was extremely angry, thinking to herself, it seems those people don't know Eunice and me. Fiona lowered her eyes, and a blazing red fireball formed in her hand. The fire blazed fiercely. Then I can only let you know who I am. The flame on her hand. Fiona was about to aim the fireball straight at the two thugs when a deep voice interrupted. Wait. He reached out and held the wrist holding the fireball. Fiona, he said to her, you don't need to do such dirty things. The two thugs looked fearfully at the newly appeared man. Feeling scared, they muttered, The mercenary king is here. The tall blonde man held Fiona's shoulder. He whispered in her ear, "Let me handle this." The skinny thug looked at the mercenary nervously and stammered, "I didn't know she was your person. I was about to let her go, so please forgive us this time." The bald thug was also scared now, looking at Eunice. He raised his hands anxiously and urged Eunice, "Come on, hurry up, hurry up." The skinny thug was about to make a run for it. "You're back, so we'll end this here, please." Before he could finish, a large hand grabbed his collar tightly and lifted him up. The mercenary looked at them calmly. "If I let you go, the Duke will scold me." The mercenary said this and then turned to Fiona asking, "Boss, should I cut off their privates and hang them up?" The mercenary lifted the brown-haired thug by the collar. "If I let you go like this, I'll get scolded by the Duke." He then turned to Fiona and said, "Boss, should I cut off their privates and hang them up?" Fiona propped her chin and replied, No, that's a bit." Before she finished, the bald thug bowed his head. "Thank you very much, sir. I won't do such things again." "Luckily, you were forgiven," Fiona said to Eunice. "Miss, you better close your eyes. It'll be better." Eunice covered her ears and agreed. "Yes, yes." Fiona used both hands to cover Eunice's ears. She said to the mercenary, "All right then, don't cut it off all at once, do it slowly." Fiona's words struck like lightning to the two thugs. "Ah," she continued, "remember my face well so you don't mess with the wrong person next time." The brown-haired thug cried, "Yes, sorry everyone." The mercenary told Fiona, "The lecture is over now." He frowned. "Now I will carry out the next sentence." Each word from the mercenary was met with a scream from the two thugs. Sigrun and the soldiers rode horses to a city shrouded in darkness. Many white flags were planted. He looked around. This place was completely swallowed by darkness. Sigrun bent down and touched a nearby corpse. When his finger touched it, the body vanished. Ryder said, "These bodies can't be saved anymore, Your Highness. What should we do?" Sigrun replied, "We will set up a base over there. Even when the official operation starts, we must eliminate the monsters in the forest." Ryder wondered, "Miss Fiona is with the researchers from the academy. Wouldn't that be better?" Sigrun recalled the day before when standing with Fiona. She asked him, "You should distinguish between work and personal matters." She pulled him close and whispered, "This isn't the place for that, you know that, right?" Sigrun nodded. She silently rejoiced that her beauty trap worked. Fiona continued, "Because we received orders from the Emperor, we came here to work." Sigrun said, "Let's go out for a walk. But if you stay here, who will take your place?" Fiona answered, "I can direct everyone." As Ung approached, their relationship was still as good as before. Fiona asked Sigrun, "What exactly are you thinking, huh? Everywhere I look, it's just the same." Although they grew up fast, they still looked young. Kyung dropped a golden necklace. Fiona picked it up and gave it to him. "Kyung, you dropped this." He took it and said, "Thanks. Do you want to see? This is my wife back home. Before I left, she was already pregnant." Fiona was surprised. "Oh my God! Why didn't you tell me? And why aren't you staying with her?" "Why did you come here?" Kyung reassured her. "There was no other way because this is the mission." Even so, I still returned before her due date. Don't worry. Still, Fiona thought to herself that Abin was truly cruel. Then she told Kyung, "All right. I will try my best to help you complete the mission as soon as possible to return to her." On Fiona's side, Gwento had just finished punishing the two harassers. He told her, "I'm done. No matter the reason, if you shoot lightning in the forest, our troops will be scared." Fiona just scratched her head and laughed. In the forest, Fiona stroked her hair and asked privately, "But is there really no way to eliminate the existence of darkness?" Dian smiled. "Oh, you say exactly what Count Clovis says." Walking beside the two was Eunice, who was tired from climbing the steep hill. Dian asked Fiona, "Do you know the Marquis? He is the biggest sponsor of the Academy and is very popular among women. Everyone admires him greatly." And at this moment all three of them said in unison, "Besides that, he is also a truly wonderful person." Fiona thought, "Ah, that's right. He's handsome. But even though he tries very hard..." Indeed, Arn is a very great character, although quite suspicious, Rin continued. "Actually, we are also researching with the goal of eradicating darkness, but it's very rare to get significant results. Magic power and darkness are the divine powers of God. Although we discovered that all are symbiotically related," Fiona responded, "divine power is a completely opposite force to magic power. Magic power is basically a property similar to darkness. Magic and magic stones also interact with each other. So if you research it, you will find the answer. Diane was surprised. You really know well. I'm glad to meet someone who cares about the same favorite field. My name is Diane. Feel free to call me that. Fiona happily replied. I'm Fiona Green. The Green family is frequently attacked by demons, so I'm also interested in this topic. I hope you'll look favorably on me. Diane asked, I have a question for you, miss. Why do you think darkness has become more active recently in SAO? Fiona replied, that's a difficult question. Honestly, I'm very curious too. Everyone in the world thinks darkness is a natural disaster. If 1 or 2 darknesses appear within a year, that area becomes chaotic. The dead land will recover somewhat after a long time, but recently darkness has appeared frequently, and people feel scared. Many are curious about the reason for the darkness outbreak like this. Diane bent down and touched the surface of the lake with her hand. Some people think that the frequent appearance of darkness lately is because the gods are angry. I heard there's even a religion related to this. Fiona was surprised. Even a religion? Sao Eunice asked. Excuse me, Saintess. This is the northern part of the village. Should we cleanse the village first, or? Fiona looked up at the statue, which was partly damaged in the middle of the lake. She thought, the anger of the gods and even the religion. I already knew this content. Are these really caused by the gods' anger? Is that why it happened? No, there were never any gods from the start. If not the gods doing, then it must be human actions. Sagwento rubbed his chin and asked Fiona, is that you? After investigating when he returned, her face was complicated. After discovering this, I stared at her as her expression changed to a smile immediately. So, you were affected by SAO? Fiona laughed. I'm just laughing. SAO is nothing. Gwento still stared at her. I was very surprised because the Winter Guardian I initially thought was the one with a strong build. Fiona replied, sorry, I'm just an ordinary person. He objected. Ordinary? No one is more special than you. Suddenly, Gwento narrowed his eyes and asked Fiona, can the dark girl come to the same place, 2x0? Outside the city, there was a dark aura, along with many soldiers blowing horns. The horns sounded long. Seeing the dark aura spreading, everyone panicked and ran to find safety. They hurried to find their saintess, but couldn't find her. Amid the chaos, Fiona and Eunice appeared, which made everyone feel somewhat reassured. After helping Eunice down from the horse, Fiona instructed her to evacuate with the knights. Then she ordered the knights to quickly escort Eunice while she herself would go ahead. Eunice hurriedly grabbed Fiona's hand. Wait a moment, miss. Are you planning to return to that dark aura? SAO. Although Fiona reassured her that she would return after saving everyone at headquarters. But Eunice still couldn't help feeling uneasy. Something was trying to kill the young lady. I could sense it. Something lurking in the dark shadows. Yet when she heard the cry for help that someone was trapped, in the main headquarters, Fiona hurriedly apologized to Eunice. We'll talk later. She quickly urged her horse forward despite Eunice's calls. She and Gwento successfully rescued the person trapped in the headquarters. That person thanked her. But she thought the one who should be thanked was Gwento because he risked danger to follow her. She also asked if there was really no one else inside. And he replied yes. I am the last one. Hearing his confirmation, Fiona sighed in relief. Thank goodness, now we just need to return. But before she could escape those thoughts, suddenly her horse neighed. She immediately realized a monster was charging towards her. Gwento quickly looked towards her, and she urged him to hurry. Gwento, I will use wide-range magic. Although it was easy to defeat that monster with just one move, Fiona kept urging everyone to leave quickly because she knew this place was very dangerous. But just as she finished speaking, Gwento suddenly shouted loudly, Young lady, behind you. Fiona turned around reflexively and couldn't believe it because it came so fast. It was the first time she saw this dark aura, but before she could realize what was happening, she was engulfed by that darkness, swallowed whole, unable to breathe, and feeling something crushing her body. She gradually lost consciousness, but suddenly she heard some sound. Is anyone here? Can you confirm? Fiona felt very confused by this. What is this? Someone? Is this what Eunice mentioned? Someone? That sound kept echoing. Can't breathe now. Sigrun's gaze remained fixed on the direction Fiona went, despite being advised to wait inside because it was very dangerous outside. He did not care at all. I will go for a bit, then come back. The soldier felt confused, not knowing where he intended to go. Then Sigrun jumped onto his horse, urged the horse forward, looking ahead with a determined gaze to find Fiona in the dead of night. The three of them hurriedly galloped into the dark forest to find the place where Fiona disappeared. After a while, Gwento found the place he needed to reach. This was where the young lady had vanished. Seeing the pitch-black area continuously emitting whistling sounds, Eunice couldn't help but be terrified, because she didn't want to believe what Gwento just said. However, he firmly insisted that what he said was true because he sensed a huge dark energy source inside. It was so large that just looking at it made him scared. Sigrun looked at that void, panting. Even so, now there was only one way to save Fiona, which was to break them. Hearing this, Gwento shouted, "Your Highness, it's very dangerous." Eunice's voice was gentler, but she couldn't help but worry, because she knew this was life-threatening for him. In response, Sigrun remained calm. "I don't care, Eunice. Can you create a space there?" She heard him say that, hesitated a bit, but knowing she couldn't change his mind, she replied, "Probably yes." Hearing Eunice's answer, he didn't hesitate and ordered her, "That's fine then. Now create the space." Eunice immediately focused all her concentration on creating a space. A shimmering golden light appeared before their eyes. That light created a space, though not very large, enough for Sigrun to see Fiona. He shouted and quickly reached out to catch her, but was too late. Then, she was swallowed again by that darkness, but perhaps those efforts were not in vain because Fiona heard his voice in time. Although she didn't know whose voice it was and couldn't open her eyes, suddenly she woke up. The first thing that struck her eyes was not indefinite darkness but a dazzling white light. She wondered where she was, then turned and saw a firm chest of a man. It was Sigrun. She looked back at her situation with him. He was shirtless, and her clothes were no longer the ones she wore before. A thought flashed in her mind that made her very embarrassed. Could it be that they already did that? Thinking that, she shouted loudly and that sound woke Sigrun up. He quickly grabbed her hand. "Fiona, you're awake? Why are you in such a hurry? I just woke up." She thought this was impossible because she remembered still facing something vague in the mist, and perhaps out of great curiosity about what was happening, she asked, "Why am I suddenly lying in bed with you like this? Am I in heaven now? Could it be so?" Sigrun hugged Fiona tightly and spoke in a very gentle and caring tone. "You keep making me worry like this. Can you say a few words?" Sitting fully in that strong embrace, Fiona felt extremely happy, her face already flushed. "I'm sorry." Sigrun's large hands kept patting her back. When she asked where this was, Sigrun told her it was a temporary tent set up in the forest. The headquarters was burned down by darkness, and he advised that since her body was still weak, she couldn't go to the Marquise's mansion yet. He also reassured her that everyone else was safe, so she shouldn't worry. Seeing Fiona seemed lost in thought about something made Sigrun very curious. "Why don't you lie down and rest?" Her eyes were full of determination. She didn't know how hard everyone had worked to save her or what she had seen in the darkness. "I want to find out about it right away." Hearing her say this, Sigrun hurriedly stopped her. She continued, "I know I don't have the strength anymore, but I have to do one thing first." She quickly stretched out her arms, hoping to erase the distance between them for a moment. He looked at her action with great confusion because he didn't know what she intended to do. Fiona gently said, "I think you might have cried, so I want to hug you." Hearing that from her, Sigrun felt a bit embarrassed because that behavior made him feel like a child. He hugged Fiona tightly. "Fiona, you're driving me crazy." 2 days later, in a city near the affected area, Fiona met Yoon Suk-young and Gwonto. She felt a bit tired from their excessive worry. Although she said she was fine, they kept talking non-stop because they knew the Duke and Sigrun didn't think that way. Fiona asked them to keep it a secret from the Duke for her sake, but they refused because none of them had the guts to keep secrets from the Duke for her. Once again, Fiona was lost in thought. Although after this incident, she had received countless thanks from everyone. Researchers at the Academy and engineers had come to see her. The Marquis Velter, the Lord there, had also warmly welcomed her and hosted dinner for everyone. Through this incident, she even discovered Eunice's power, so everything went quite smoothly. But on the way to the Marquis's mansion, she still had doubts about who the figure in the darkness really was. Could it just be an illusion? Can darkness create illusions? Thinking about it only made things more confusing without answers. Also, there was one more thing. Before she was engulfed by that darkness, even if only briefly, she had pushed the darkness back. Could it be that she could control the darkness? Fiona silently recalled the scene of being engulfed by darkness. Even though it was just for a moment, she could stop the approaching darkness. She looked at her 2 palms worriedly, thinking, "Can I really control the darkness?" Fiona began to think more carefully about her original self. This time she asked herself, "If so, then I have another question. The original Fiona couldn't escape the darkness. But why was I saved? We share the same body, Fiona thought inside, rubbing her hands to soothe herself. No matter how she thought, there was no answer. This headache is killing me. Sigrun probably noticed the worry on her face, but just silently observed. That night in the dining room, everyone ate and laughed cheerfully. Then Sigrun and Fiona stepped out. Fiona ate happily and exclaimed, "Ah, I'm so full." Baron Lenton prepared everything so well. So many delicious dishes. But unlike her, Sigrun didn't seem very enthusiastic. So many delicious dishes. But unlike her, Sigrun didn't look very enthusiastic. He replied blandly, "That's right." Fiona glanced at him worriedly. Is he tired because earlier he didn't eat enough? Sigrun didn't look at her. His face was a bit gloomy, looking away, seeming distant. "It's really good that this time I was sent here. Both the money and the people here are much better than I thought," Fiona said, while happily spreading her arms and running around Sigrun. She winked and continued talking to Sigrun. "Those people think that they owe me their lives later on. Surely they will be much happier with us. Besides, you're more amazing than I thought," she praised Sigrun. Sigrun barely reacted. When Fiona continued talking about the darkness, it seemed I could control that darkness. Surely it would help. A lot with destroying the darkness. Hearing this, Sigrun glanced at his beloved beside him. His face darkened and he snapped. "Are you planning to join in destroying the darkness again?" Fiona cheerfully replied. "Of course." But just after finishing her sentence, Sigrun suddenly remembered when her body became weak. Then she collapsed. He caught Fiona, panicking and repeatedly calling her name. Sigrun held her in his arms. Her body was cold as ice. The space then became so quiet that you could almost only hear the pounding heartbeat of the prince. His Highness was anxiously worried, not knowing if his beloved was alive or dead. He gently touched Fiona's skin, trembling, constantly calling her name, watching her lie silently in his arms, writing back as if the world was collapsing. Surely, fearing that scene would happen again, he coldly replied to Fiona, "You don't need to help me deal with people even if he wasn't happy." I thought he would at least wish her a happy birthday. She stood frozen, looking at Sigrun, who smiled faintly and asked, "What else?" He held her shoulders tightly, his face tense like a stretched string, worriedly saying, "You must not act like last time again. Don't do that ever again. I can't trust you. Even so, what I did was right." "I know you just need to reflect on yourself," Fiona stubbornly said. "I'm the one responsible for that position." "That's what I have to do." But Sigrun persistently stopped her. "Yes, you're right. But sometimes you need to prioritize yourself." Fiona couldn't hold back and started raising her voice at Sigrun. "My information about the darkness can help you. So why do we have to argue like this over it?" Sigrun responded in kind. "That's why I said I don't need your help." As he spoke, images of Fiona's cold body in his arms appeared in his mind, but he didn't want to lose her, no matter how stubborn he had to be. The two stood looking at each other. Fiona remained firm, while Sigrun's face darkened, maybe mixed with some fear and worry. "Sigrun, if you feel bothered, don't sarcastically respond to every word from me." Her words stabbed straight into Sigrun's heart, leaving him stunned. She cried loudly, "I'd rather you be angry with me than be a fool." Then she decisively turned her back and walked away. Sigrun immediately chased after her. "Wait, Fiona, please go somewhere else. Don't follow me." Sigrun seemed frozen. Hearing those words from his beloved, his heart tightened and his legs couldn't move, but his eyes kept following her back. He sighed deeply, holding his face in pain, muttering to himself, "It's not like that." At a tavern in Gwento, a man who had never comforted a girl before looked at Fiona anxiously and stammered, I brought you some pastries." Fiona angrily scolded him. "How old do you think I am? I said just let me go, so why are you following me?" She cried while running into the warehouse. So how could she keep going? Everyone just said a few words like that. Fiona began to confide. I argued with Sigrun. Gwento seemed to understand the problem. "So, it's about the darkness?" "Yes. I thought what I did was right. But Sigrun said such hateful things." She cried as she spoke. Gwento remained silent, listening. Fiona continued, "I know he's worried about me." Gwento reached out to wipe her tears, but something held him back. He looked at her, then clenched his fist and leaned against the wooden box where Fiona sat, comforting her. "Fiona, you're a good girl. Though a bit reckless, you have a sense of responsibility. In my opinion, your thoughts are one-sided. So I hope you don't pay attention to what Sigrun says anymore." The more Gwento spoke, the redder he blushed. Don't be swayed by anyone's words because you are very precious. The more Kunto spoke, the redder he became. Don't be swayed by the words of an AI because she is very precious. Hearing that, Fiona was startled and looked wide-eyed at Gwento, but it seemed Gwento's comforting words worked. Fiona happily recovered and wiped her tears. Thanks, this is just my personal question. Are you dating Sigrun? Do you two have plans to marry or get engaged yet? Gwento turned his head and asked Fiona. Yes, we haven't yet, but why are you suddenly asking that? Gwento scratched his head and replied, Because I see your relationship seems vague. Is there some issue between you two? I just thought, Sao said. Fiona, hearing Gwento mention an issue, immediately denied it. It's not like that. Then maybe it's just too much pressure, Sao said. Inside, the two were talking to each other, but outside, a figure leaned against the door, probably having heard everything. Fiona gradually recalled what had happened not long ago. She remembered when she raised her voice at her loved one. Instead of feeling pressured, she felt that Sigrun was even more pressured, accumulating more and more. She wanted Sigrun. So if asked whether she felt pressured, she thought, and then answered Gwento honestly. Actually, Sigrun was standing outside, leaning against the wall beside the window, hands clenched tightly in his pockets, teeth gritted, showing a mood that was not very happy. The night sky was full of stars, the wind blowing strongly, hitting every glass window frame. Sigrun outside decided not to stand still anymore, but turned his back and left. Gwento probably guessed there was someone outside, so he glanced outside. Is that so? It's nothing. A few days later, in the capital, Fiona and Sigrun still appeared together, but the atmosphere surrounding them was tinged with sadness. The relationship would be very difficult if both misunderstood each other. Aren't we dating? Sao asked. If not, then he must be under too much pressure, Sao said, holding Sigrun's hand while dancing in a not-so-happy atmosphere. Fiona thought as Sigrun, taking advantage of their closeness, whispered, How is your body now? I'm fine now, fully recovered. Luckily, after we finish dancing, let's talk. Fiona avoided Sigrun's gaze and declined the offer. If not, then say it now, Sigrun said, gently squeezing Fiona's waist. Suddenly, lifting her up, Fiona didn't have time to resist and was lifted by her loved one. Her face blushed, trembling as she said, Sigrun, okay, everyone is watching us, put me down quickly. Sigrun looked at her reaction and smiled smugly. After the dance, Sigrun pulled Fiona's hand and asked, Where are you going? Somewhere we can settle everything. Fiona followed Sigrun but couldn't help feeling uneasy inside. No wonder her mood was unsettled today. She instinctively hugged her arm, rubbing it because of the chill. Seeing this, Sigrun asked, Are you cold? And tried to give her his jacket. No, I'm fine. Fiona waved her hand to refuse. You're cold too. Sigrun was silent for a moment. If I had known, I would have stayed inside. Fiona clasped her hands behind her back, standing a bit away from her loved one. I won't go into your room, Sigrun. He followed her momentum and replied, I won't take you anywhere, Aben. It would be troublesome if they found out. Then he raised his hand. Come sit down. If you stand too long, your legs will hurt. Then he helped Fiona sit on a chair in front of the fountain. Fiona asked, Why are you beating around the bush today? Sigrun looked a bit embarrassed, his eyes filled with sadness, and replied, I don't know either. Sigrun gently cupped Fiona's face with both hands, looked straight into her eyes, and stammered, I will only say this once. You have to answer immediately. Fiona looked at him worriedly. Have you been feeling pressured all this time? The atmosphere didn't allow Fiona to finish speaking. Sigrun continued, Let's stop. Maybe he has vaguely realized something. Sigrun thought that Fiona had accepted him only because of their childhood feelings. He raised his hand to lift her face, cherishing every little bit, but what Sigrun wanted was simply, I don't want her to lose herself. He thought back to their childhood memories when they sat and talked together. She would always smile and talk to him even when he didn't care. Sigrun did this because I want to cherish our childhood, but until now he still felt that he wanted to be by her side. He tried to avoid that thought, thinking while remembering Fiona's radiant smile. In Sigrun's mind, if I am a burden to her, if I hurt her, he thought, his expression darkened with pain, whether now or in the future. Under the night sky, snowflakes slowly fell, and the trees were left with only branches. Fiona suspiciously asked Sigrun, Are we breaking up? Her expression was sad and reluctant. Sigrun replied, Huh? You know the reason well. Fiona then remembered someone who asked her, So is your relationship with Sigrun stressful? At that time, she answered truthfully, bowing her head. She was startled to realize that Sigrun had overheard the conversation. She stood up abruptly, thinking, That's why he wanted to break up with me. She clenched her hand tightly, thinking further. If she thought more carefully, this was exactly what she also wanted. Originally, she just thought Sigrun was the main character in the novel she had written, and becoming his lover was only a temporary method. One day she would return, and the more she thought, the more she remembered the image between her and Sigrun as the cold wind began to blow in gusts. But she suddenly felt something collapsing. She doubted and wondered if until now she still thought Sigrun was just the male lead of the original story. Realizing this, she was stunned when Sigrun called out to Fiona. She was suddenly startled awake. He gently touched her face and said, "If my existence is a burden to you," he continued, "then let's stop." His hand was still on her face, and at that moment she suddenly realized the truth. Sigrun unintentionally said hurtful words. She thought while looking up at him, and then she thought of how she also hurt Sigrun. They were very close but separated by a wall, yet they both shared sadness. Sigrun continued, "Should I know the answer that has already been decided?" But he only received silence from her. He smiled, but deep inside was sadness and helplessness. He said if so, he would withdraw his hand. Sigrun turned and walked away, saying goodbye, Fiona. Behind him, Fiona was bowing her head. At that moment, Fiona just thought, don't go. I didn't mean to hurt you. I know you said that because you care about me. Because you like me, but I have to be responsible for the world I wrote. So I have to close my eyes and pretend not to know your worries. Actually, I am very scared too. I know you like me. Our ending can't be perfect. One day you will have to let me go. I thought now is the time to return happiness to you according to the rules. But as she thought, she recalled past scenes, the worried look on his face when she was hurt. She thought further, maybe letting him go is not the right thing. Thinking of this, she suddenly burst into tears. She thought, how could it be otherwise? She thought the ending she wanted. As she cried, she recalled moments when they blushed because of their close distance. She thought, she knew everything, but it meant nothing to her. Her heart beat fast. She realized she wanted to be with him. Sweet memories of the two of them from before filled her mind. She spoke up to stop Sigrun from leaving. "Sigrun, don't go." Those words made Sigrun pause. Then she ran up and hugged him tightly, saying she didn't want to break up. He turned, puzzled, asking why. The wind blew fiercely. He turned back and gently touched Fiona's cheek, saying don't worry and don't cry because of him. Fiona thought, how could that be? No way. He leaned close to her face and asked why she was holding on to him. She replied it wasn't because he pressured her. Hearing that, Sigrun said he wanted her more and more, and if she understood his heart, she would feel very pressured. Saying this, he gently touched Fiona's forehead, looking at her tenderly. Fiona was still crying and replied that it wasn't true. Sigrun was delighted and said, "Then let me." But before he could finish, Fiona said, "Let me." She said, "Sigrun, I'm not afraid. Please continue to stay by my side. I will make you happy." Hearing this, Sigrun was stunned and said, Fiona then blushed and laughed out loud. She was embarrassed and wondered why he laughed, then said seriously, "I am serious." Suddenly, Sigrun kissed her. That moment surprised her. He said, "Fiona, since you cried for me as a child, from that moment I have liked you." Hearing this, she cried and said she liked him too and would no longer avoid him. She would no longer make him worry and would always be by his side. She said she would get jealous in the future. Even if he found a better girl, she would not break up. He smiled and said, "Do whatever you want." Then he hugged her waist, and she wrapped her arms around Sigrun's neck. Sigrun said, "You are mine," making her smile even happier. Then he joked, "Fiona, you have to keep me well, okay?" They continued exchanging passionate kisses. Fiona thought she was almost suffocating. "Because the joy is overflowing inside me now. I cannot back down because this is what I desire. Now nothing can separate us. The sky is clear. The sun shines brightly in the noisy and lively party." Libya raises a cup of tea and speaks to Fiona, so she wouldn't be surprised when Libya said engagement, which made Fiona a little surprised. She was stunned, not knowing what to say. She said engagement? Yes, normally there should be an engagement, but now maybe I have to think about it, huh? Then she forced a smile. Libya sighed at Fiona's attitude and said, "Miss Fiona is always so calm, huh?" Amidst the noisy, lively atmosphere, Fiona thought, "Not long ago I also thought about whether to break up or not." She fiddled with the teacup, saying it's not urgent. But in her heart she wondered if Sigrun was thinking about that. And Avon hasn't come to the capital yet. She thought further, if I say we will get engaged, I wonder how he would react. She imagined him forbidding Sigrun from coming after 8 o'clock, and Sigrun would be like, it's curfew time already. I have to go back, but she would say, why are you so strict and obedient? 8 o'clock, okay. But thinking again, if Sigrun marries me, she imagined at our wedding Avon would frown and say, Who is your father? Thinking of that, Fiona frowned, while Libya beside her looked puzzled and asked, what are you thinking about, making Fiona startled? Under peaceful socializing, there is no crown prince or queen. Fiona just said, but in her heart thought, first I have to ask Sigrun if this is okay. As she said, she put the teacup down. New worries were sown from many different aspects. She said nothing changed. Scene to the night's training ground. This place was also noisy. The training sounds made the training ground even noisier. Sigrun stepped forward holding a sword, suddenly noticing something strange. What are you thinking? What's wrong? Then he turned around and saw Ken talking to a blonde girl who looked like a noble. He thought Ken was confused. The person in front of him was a young lady, probably about 5 or 6 years younger, but the biggest question was, who was she? He noticed from her look that she was not an ordinary person in status on her face. Nor was she a noble lady, he knew. Maybe while lost in thought, his hand was fiddling with the sword. Suddenly he thought, could that young lady be an ex-lover? If true, he must bury him underground. That would be saving this world. Thinking of that, Sigrun's face darkened. He clenched the sword tightly, then slowly drew the sword, still staring at Ken, making him shudder. This made Ken jump and say, Your Highness, the Crown Prince. He was also confused seeing Sigrun. Meanwhile, Sigrun aggressively stepped forward, saying, This is training time. What are you doing, huh? In his mind thinking, if he was surprised, then that must be right. At that moment, the young lady smiled and bowed to Sigrun. In making him hesitate, she said, It's my first time attending a ceremony. It's okay to call me that, right, brother? This surprised Sigrun, not knowing what to say. The young lady smiled beautifully and introduced herself as the great princess. Just call me Arya, he doubted in his heart. Brother recalled when he was little. He saw a servant holding a pink teddy bear going somewhere, now facing this sister. He remembered, right? Although this was the first time seeing this face, she was not a direct royal princess, he heard. She was the daughter of a royal consort with a lower noble birth, right? Arya said happily, Sorry to disturb your morning training, brother, because I want to share a story about my former night with Lord Ken. That sentence startled Ken, while Sigrun just said, coldly. Suddenly, Arya grabbed Ken cloak and said, Can I take him away for a while? As soon as she finished speaking, Arya pulled Ken running, leaving Sigrun stunned. The two of them rushed away like that. Because Ken used to be a knight in the royal princess's service, so they had a master-servant relationship. I also heard Ken was not a lackey for his father, who was Marquis Eris. When Ken went after Arya in a chaotic mess, said, Your Highness, the great princess is because of that, huh? Not making pawns for your father, he is Marquis Eris. When R.S. Channel went after Arya, the chaos of the old island said, Her Royal Highness is because of that, huh? Sigrun thought further. Even so, I have no interest in my half-brother. This mother also seems to have no blood relation other than being his mother. He turned to think more. But she still hasn't taken sides with me or the Crown Prince. If the eldest son of Marquis Eric, who is ambiguous, gets involved in this. He thought maybe this time he could find something interesting in the mansion. Fiona suspiciously said, younger sister. Sigrun replied that yes, she heard that they share the same father but different mothers, which made her quite surprised and at a loss for words. She thought there was a younger princess than Sigrun who had never appeared in any scenes, just like in the original story. Sigrun continued, saying she heard that her body was weak and she never went outside, so no one had met her until recently when she appeared. Fiona flipped through the letters and replied that she was the great princess, right? If so, then she must have recovered. That's a relief. She said she appeared at the right time, waiting until after the Queen and Crown Prince settled down before all activities began, muttering like that. She said they had been following the Queen all along, which made Sigrun frown, and he said, Is that so? If she opposes me, I will kill her. Surprised that there aren't many members of the royal direct line. Usually, almost no women survive until their children are born. The Queen always deals properly with women who have been touched by the Emperor, her children. Sigrun pulled a chair and said, although the Queen Consort is of lower rank, no matter what, she is still a noble. But because she has no backing, it seems her life was spared, Fiona said. Moreover, since she is a princess and not a prince, they left her alone. Making him pause, she continued, If she were bedridden, they would think she was not worth worrying about. Her Highness, the princess, seems smarter than I thought, she said while looking at the letters. She thought she trusted and knew when to restrain her pride, Fiona added. And that's why you said a new force has appeared. Fiona and Sigrun sat facing each other. Hearing that, he thought carefully and said the Duke Priscilla and Marquis Clovis have nobles supporting neutrality. Very ambiguous among the 5 great families. Are those people really neutral? Fiona was silent, thinking. She looked at Sigrun and said yes. The heads of the 2 families are maintaining neutrality. Illogically, the letters dropped onto the table with a thud. She thought, according to the principle, Arn should be in love with Eunice. Things have completely changed from the present. Even Duke Priscilla as well. Surely there is a possibility those people will make a different choice, she said. If it really is family, they might have to trample each other from the start. The stuffed rabbit was torn and thrown to the ground. The image changed to show the legs of a little boy, both hands tightly gripping someone. He said, "What do you want?" Sigrun silently thought, then slowly spoke. "I want to wait a little longer," Fiona said. "Is that so? Then do as you wish," Sigrun said. "I don't care much." And Fiona only said maybe because neither of us is obsessed with power. Then she smiled and muttered to herself to see the next letter and thought for me, as long as you are happy, that's enough, but I don't know your true feelings. Maybe I have to discuss it with Abin again, Fiona thought, suddenly stunned. Sigrun looked at her confused and softly called, "Fiona," but Fiona darkened and said Abin has gone missing. Sigrun suspiciously called Fiona, but at this moment Fiona looked at the letter's content in shock. The more she read, the tighter she gripped the letter. She said this was sent from Jerome. She recounted that recently many monsters have been active in Halong, and people said their numbers are increasing. Hearing this, Sigrun was stunned. She continued, "To find the cause, Abin personally went there, to check the monster situation. Abin and 2 close aides entered the forest in snowy, windy weather." Fiona said, "But since he went, he hasn't returned yet. The young lady wants to return to Halong Mansion?" Mrs. Celine worriedly asked Fiona if she really intended to return to Halong Mansion alone. Fiona noticed her worry and said that Jaren wrote a letter asking me to go. "If I don't go, then what?" She hesitated. Mrs. Celine stepped forward and said, "The Lord's disappearance is very unusual. Young lady," she continued, "and surely he is fighting very hard against the monsters now. Even the situation is very dangerous." Hearing this, Fiona fell silent and didn't want to speak. Fiona knew that, yes, if I go there alone it will be very dangerous, but if I leave Abin to fight alone, it will definitely be very disadvantageous. She thought the situation was urgent, but she still hadn't found a solution. What should I do now? Suddenly, someone stepped forward and said to let him go there. Fiona resisted. That was Sigrun. He stood with his arms crossed, leaning against the wall. Fiona thought, or said, "Are you okay?" Sigrun nodded, but it seemed Fiona was still hesitant. She said, "But you?" At the same time, he signaled for the servants to withdraw. Both bowed and withdrew. He told Fiona that the current situation was uncertain whether Abin was alive or dead. Could he really let me go there alone? This made Fiona stunned. Sigrun gently touched her cheek, but his face was full of pain, which made Fiona even more stunned. Seeing that look, she thought he was worried about her. But according to the rules, Sigrun had also worried about her in the same way. She thought so, meaning maybe, could that thing really happen? If that was true, then she would be the only one left. Sigrun gently touched Fiona's face and said, "I know you're very worried." This made her pause. Fiona replied, "Yes, I am thinking about that." She continued, "I am Aben's daughter, but this letter was sent here waiting for me, so I have to go." Then she pulled Sigrun's hand down from her face and said, "Honestly, I am very worried and a bit confused, and also because of Lord Abin. I know everything will be dangerous for me." But she smiled and said, "But I believe this decision of mine is the wisest," she confidently said to Sigrun like that. Night fell in the banquet hall full of people whispering and chatting. A servant came and handed Fiona and Libya 2 glasses of wine. Both took and accepted the wine glasses from the servant. Fiona no longer had any mood. She felt tired and the surroundings were noisy. Her face darkened, almost lifeless. She thought she had been very confident telling Sigrun those words. She thought further. Now she didn't know what to do anymore. Although drinking wine, the liquid flowed down continuously. She thought further. She had to prepare for the upcoming trip situation, but didn't know where to go and couldn't refuse invitations to attend these parties. It was so exhausting. Enough. I think I'm about to die. Libya beside her whispered, "This wine is very strong." Drink slowly, or you'll faint. But at this moment, Fiona staggered and said, "What sweet wine is this? This wine is really good." Libya appeared at this party, because she also just arrived at today's party. Fiona was thinking, this smell must be luxurious and trendy, right? Libya anxiously asked Fiona if she was okay, but Fiona said, "I'm very fine." Libya said, "Why are you so beautiful today?" "The Priscilla family. Could it be they want to support the #1 queen?" Libya looked at Fiona like that and just sighed. She thought if that was really the case, she would become her enemy. What a pity. At that moment, someone came attracting Libya's attention while Fiona was thinking about what she said to Sigrun, and how she needed to think carefully. Someone asked, "Is there a problem?" attracting Fiona's attention. She focused on that person, looking up to see Count Curtis appear, attracting both girls' attention. He said, "Sorry to bother the young ladies chatting here." In response, he said, Libya glared at him and said, "If you know that, then go somewhere else." That man was Count Bill Curtis. Hearing that rude remark, he still smiled as if nothing happened. Fiona thought, who is he? Why does he act so familiar? We don't even know each other. Then the Count raised his hand and said, "Sorry, miss. I came here to meet the young lady standing next to you." Seeing that, Fiona spoke her suspicion. "It seems this is our first meeting, right? Is there something wrong?" The Count continued, "It's an honor to meet you, Miss Fiona Halong. Please call me by my name." Hearing that, Fiona thought, is this a joke? She thought Libya didn't like this man. She replied to him, "I think if there's something you want to meet me." "What is it?" She still smiled in response while he smiled lightly. Then he muttered, "Recently, it seems you received a letter, right?" This surprised Fiona, and in her head it was like a loud noise made her stunned. She remembered the letters lying, scattered on the table, her surprised face when reading those letters, and the heartbreak in them. Scattered on the table, her surprised face when reading the letters, and the heartbreak within. The Count saw that and sneered, but Fiona thought he remembered. Amidst the noisy hall, she thought she just remembered she had forgotten that letter because of Aben's matter. She recalled previously receiving a letter, a very strange love letter. The content of the letter, "Miss Fiona, I have always loved you unilaterally." Hearing that, the Count laughed and said, "Then could you spare some time to talk to me for a while?" Fiona's proposal. She didn't know what to say, and his face also revealed a sinister look. She thought she didn't know since when he loved her. Clearly, he didn't know much about her, but suddenly claimed to love her secretly, which was really suspicious. While thinking, she fiddled with her wine glass and continued thinking, then coldly smiled at the Count, thinking he was nothing to her. Then she told him, "All right," but in her heart she thought, if he liked her, she would let him know the taste. The love letter sent to Fiona said, "Miss Fiona, if we were a couple, surely in the future we would be very good together. Under the starry night sky." Fiona and the Count arranged to meet in the hallway. She thought, oh my, a love letter like this is really the first time I've seen one. But unfortunately, she already had a boyfriend, so she wasn't excited at all. She said to the Count, "Let me speak first," she said. "I won't answer your letter." Meaning she had rejected his confession, which made the Count stunned and speechless upon hearing those words. He replied to Fiona, "I know that, but I just want to get close and share more of my stories with you, miss." But Fiona thought, want to get close and share stories? Does he want to test my patience? Nevertheless, she smiled and said, "All right then. What is it?" The words he said next stunned her. He said, "I know a lot about you, miss," he continued, "and what I know is very different from what others know about you." At that moment, his face showed a dangerous look. He raised one hand to his chest and stretched the other toward Fiona and said, "Now, let me tell you about that difference," he said. "If we become a couple, I think I can do many things more beneficial than now." As I said in the previous letter, he told Fiona, "I hope Miss will make a wiser choice." Hearing that, Fiona clenched her hand and remained silent. But in her heart, she thought, honestly, he's the kind of person I don't want to get involved with at all. At that moment, he said, "Come with me and I will tell you what I know." Hearing this, Fiona became suspicious. Secrets about myself? There are so many things blocking me now, but I definitely can't be shaken by these words. She replied to the Count, "I won't go anywhere and I don't care about that." "Can I leave now?" This surprised the Count because of her straightforward attitude. The Count sighed and said, "What a pity, but I hope Miss will accept that." Then he reached into his pocket and handed Fiona a letter. "This is an invitation letter. I hope you will agree. Fiona looked at the letter and smiled faintly. But the Count said, I hope Miss will reconsider this matter. He smiled, but his face was full of danger. In short, the best person beside Miss, even better than the Prince, is only me. I am much more valuable than His Highness, she said after hearing those words. Then I have reconsidered. Then he put his hand on his chest and said with a crazy smile, Miss has decided to choose me, hasn't she? But before he could finish, she tore the invitation letter in half. To his astonishment, Fiona smiled and said, Count Bill Curtis, do you think I need your value that much? Then she stepped on the torn pieces of the invitation letter at her feet and said almost threateningly, If you bring up the word value to compare with His Highness, one more time, don't blame me if I don't let it slide. Although Fiona smiled, her words were full of threat and coldness. She said, Just one more time, remember that. Back at the noisy banquet hall, Fiona took a new glass of wine. Someone asked her, It seems like something is bothering you. About Count Bill Curtis earlier? She took the wine and said, Maybe. Fiona sighed and said, Now I know why you don't like him. And Libya said, What I don't like about him isn't just about manners. No, it's because he is dividing factions and creating a new group in this high society. Fiona asked about the SAO faction. Libya replied, I've heard. It seems he is running a secret group among the nobles. This is really suspicious, Fiona thought. Feeling surprised and thinking if that's the case, she recalled that letter and thought, could that letter be an invitation to join that group? SAO, Libya continued. I also heard that he is opening a rather strange chapter. She said that he can control monsters too. That means he can save those possessed by darkness. Libya continued. This is something even the mages and priests of the royal palace cannot do. But it has not yet been confirmed whether that is true, Fiona thought. Those possessed by darkness controlling monsters. Sal Libya continued. That's really surprising. Because the nobles are very interested in this. But I don't like him at all. Hearing that, Fiona immediately added, Then from now on, I am the second person to hate him. Also thinking SAO about this made Libya stunned. Fiona smiled and said to Libya, that made her quite surprised. Libya laughed and said, Then we have become allies. Both clinked glasses. The banquet hall was noisy. The young ladies were chatting about something. It turned out Sigrun had arrived and caught Fiona. He said, Fiona SAO, why are you so drunk? While Fiona in his arms just breathed evenly and said, Then he turned to Libya who was smirking and said, You mean because she drank with another guy? While Sigrun was stunned, Fiona fainted. Libya said, I told you, didn't you understand? SAO, she met some man. When she came back, she looked very upset and annoyed. And Sigrun frowned, asking, Who is that man? To which Libya replied, SAO. Did you ask her directly? Those around wondered what was going on, but they all didn't know. Libya said, But being this drunk must be because of your highness. Making Sigrun startled when he heard that. He said, What? SAO because of me? It turned out Sigrun had talked with other young ladies. This was seen by Fiona and also caught Libya's attention. Libya said, You should ask her directly, it would be better. Fiona was leaning on Sigrun sleeping. While Sigrun thought Libya was really strange and wished Fiona wouldn't hang out with her anymore, but there was no other way. He carried her outside. At this moment Fiona woke up from drunkenness and said to Sigrun, You dare talk to another girl? This stunned Sigrun, Fiona continued. Because of you, I have this headache. You dare talk to another girl, right? Fiona hugged Sigrun's waist and laughed. You better only have me, because you belong to me. Sigrun carried Fiona outside. He held her tightly and went out to the carriage. Yes, how is everything arranged on Halong's side? The servant replied. Yes, everything is ready to start going to Halong, Sigrun responded. All right. If anything happens, remember to report to me. He carried the unconscious Fiona out the gate, thinking she would blame him a lot when she found out, but there was no other way. The servant bowed to Sigrun. He entered the mansion thinking, I only have 3 days to prepare everything. I need to convince her about this trip to Halong. This was a bit rushed, but he couldn't let her go alone, he thought. Could it be she doesn't want me to go to Halong with her? Or SAO, she always worries about me and Lord Aben, yet now she wants to abandon me like this. Carrying Fiona back to the room, but Sigrun kept thinking, but I just need to not listen. Right? Yes, I must do as I want, he thought with a bad intention. What am I thinking? I can yield to her, but this time, I absolutely cannot yield to her, even if she uses her beautiful, charming face to persuade me. No, absolutely not. Sigrun mumbled. Fiona in his arms said, "Is that him?" Then drowsily looked at Sigrun. Sigrun said, "Fiona, are you awake? What's wrong?" But Fiona only dreamily said, then drowsily looked at Sigrun. Sigrun said, "Fiona, are you awake? What's wrong?" But Fiona only dreamily said. Sigrun pointed and said, "Huh, how dare you flirt with those young ladies?" Then she angrily scolded Sigrun. But he just said, "Don't talk nonsense anymore," but in his heart he thought she was cute. To the point he wanted to kiss her passionately. He replied to Fiona, "Well, didn't you tell me to be kind to others the other day? If you don't like it, next time I won't talk to them anymore." Hearing that, Fiona stammered, Then he sat Fiona on his lap and said, "Fiona, have you talked to any guy at the party?" Fiona dimly replied, "The person who sent you a love letter the other day?" Sigrun was startled hearing that and suspiciously asked, "A love letter? What?" But Fiona said, "Never mind, it's nothing," then pretended to sleep, making Sigrun think again. She only cared to ask Han a little bit, but Sigrun knew well and thought about Fiona's habit. Always like that. Never on guard at all. She always thinks nothing will happen. But compared to her own judgment, things were not normal at all. While Sigrun was suspicious, Fiona lay asleep as if nothing happened. Surely something was going on. Fiona suddenly woke up and looked at Sigrun. Seeing that, Sigrun comforted Fiona. "Fiona, calm down. Nothing will happen to you." His hand was holding Fiona. Then he kissed her lightly and asked about the love letter. Fiona smiled but said nothing. Then she hugged him and said, "The other day I received a very strange love letter." Hearing that, Sigrun asked, "What is the name of that person?" But Fiona only said that much. Sigrun smiled faintly. The next morning, the servants busily packed luggage onto the carriage. Meanwhile, Fiona was in her room flipping through a pile of letters. She said, "These are some documents I have already prepared." Fiona felt a headache because she drank alcohol last night and said, "No need to rush, just arrange them moderately." The servant took the documents she handed over and said, "Yes, miss. But are you okay?" she asked. Fiona replied, "I'm fine, just a slight cold from the party last night." But in fact, she thought this was the second time she got so drunk. She recalled when she woke up this morning, she completely forgot everything from last night. Could it be that she talked to Sigrun while drunk? The female servant called her to wake up. "Miss Fiona, please change your clothes quickly." She was thinking her lover was handsome and had a very high tolerance for alcohol. She wondered if she did any crazy things last night. Suddenly, Sigrun stepped in and called Fiona. "Are you planning to depart during the day or at night? Can we leave tonight?" Fiona said, "Oh, Sigrun, you want to postpone until tonight?" "Probably not. I can't delay any longer. I will probably leave right after finishing packing." Sigrun said, "Your face still doesn't look well. You probably don't remember last night, right?" Fiona made an excuse. "That's true, but haven't you ever seen a beauty drunk before?" Sigrun said, "That's right, and the heir of Halong is definitely a beauty." But she was annoyed because she didn't understand why he teased her like that again. She said, "What do you mean by these things?" "All right then, what does your highness want?" Sigrun smiled and said, "What do you think I want?" He said, "Huh? A girl hiding that she received a love letter from another man?" Fiona saw Sigrun say that and thought, "Clearly he's mad at me." Fiona said, "You probably don't know him, right?" Sigrun said, "No, I'm just trying to investigate that bureaucrat's name. He's not a simple person, quite cunning." Fiona replied, "I know, but I just find him very annoying." Hearing that, Sigrun said, "I'm a bit worried about you lately. It seems like you have changed." This made Fiona look up. Suddenly stepping forward to look at Sigrun, Sigrun said, "I feel like you're taking this more seriously." "I know you're very worried about Abin," Fiona replied. "Before, I also thought it would be nice if I really changed. But just being happy and comfortable all the time isn't very good." Hearing that, Sigrun said, "That's why I want to care for you even more." Then he took Fiona's hand and said, "Fiona, I really need you. I always think that way," he continued. "I don't know what you will choose in the future, but you should make a decision now." This surprised Fiona a bit. She recalled the conversation with Count Bill Curtis. He said, compared to His Highness the Prince, as long as she was by his side, surely he would be more valuable than the prince. She realized she had caused him to misunderstand. "What?" In Sigrun's silence, she said, "I live in this world not just for you alone, but I want to become a strength for all the people I love," Fiona said. "So that's why I chose to go to Halong alone." From the beginning, I decided like that. I think that's also the reason I want to go alone, hoping he will understand me because of this. I don't intend to stay beside Sigrun in such circumstances, she continued. I tried to think of many reasons to be able to stay with him, but actually she thought that, but what worries me now are the words Bill Curtis said. It's just that I don't want to admit it. Then she placed her hand on Sigrun's hand. He said, Fiona, first you said you want to be by my side, but you don't let me go with you. How come? She angrily said. No, I mean now it's impossible. She stammered, but, Sigrun smiled and said, Fiona, you are really evil, then lifted her up. He said, do you know how much I want to be by your side? Huh, Fiona? Sigrun said. Just like you want to meet Aben right now. That sentence made Fiona freeze immediately. He continued. Besides, if from the beginning you didn't intend to abandon me like that, then I don't even drink alcohol, so why is this happening? She thought Sigrun must be using a beauty trap. She muttered, I'll listen to everything after I find Aben. Everything, she continued. Now, let's go find him, Sigrun then. Gunther smiled warmly and asked the two, Fiona and Sigrun, are you two not broken up yet? That sentence made both of them freeze. Only Gunther laughed loudly. Ca, Fiona and Sigrun were furious. Fiona raised her voice at Gunther and shouted angrily, we are very happy. The two were at Gunther's place with the mercenary group, when Gunther suddenly shouted loudly, what? How could those monsters be just a squirrel? Fiona said. Can we talk seriously? This is extremely serious. Gunther laughed loudly. Indeed, people in love are always so serious. Then laughed Caca. Fiona sighed and said, all right. Today I came here to ask you for a favor. Hearing that, Gunther immediately reacted and asked what favor. Fiona was telling the truth when suddenly someone pointed at three people and said, oh look, the captain is talking to some girl. Another said, really? That sentence made the whole tavern noisy with gossip. Could it be the captain's lover? Made Fiona angry at this moment. Gunther said everyone should watch their mouths, saying this while crossing his arms. He continued, don't talk nonsense or you'll get punished. Fiona thought, what does he mean by that as those people approached? One, said Captain. We know you are always a tolerant person, but Fiona here couldn't relax. She said, you better listen to your captain. But it seemed these guys were a bit relaxed. He even laughed and said, wow, I'm sure she's the captain's lover. I admit this girl is really beautiful. Yet all this time you hid her from us. Fiona smiled, but her words were cold. She said, I am a client. Saying that made the group just scratch their heads. Oh, really? Then, do you know our rates are very high? One said, pointing at himself and also at Fiona and Sigrun. Said many people come here to hire, but after hearing the price, they pretend to be noble and leave. He continued. But it seemed the captain still hasn't agreed to your request. This caught Gunther's attention. Fiona said, oh really, then threw a big bag of money on the table and said, so I have this much. Is it enough? That action stunned everyone. Fiona introduced herself. I am a wealthy and powerful client. Gunther clenched the money bag and sighed. Hiring all the mercenary groups. Are you a noble? He said while looking at the heavy money bag. Gunther calmly discussed and asked how long she wanted to hire, but his comrades surrendered and apologized. Fiona just smiled wryly and said, all right, I want to hire until you find the Duke. Then she noticed Sigrun was watching Gunther closely. She spoke. Sigrun, did you have any conflicts with Gunther before? Sigrun avoided eye contact and turned his head, saying, of course not. But Fiona thought there definitely was. He said, after finishing all the work, I immediately ran here. Don't you think that's a bit much? He continued. I feel like you're running to find another man first, not me. Sigrun leaned close to Fiona and said, I have loved you with all my heart, yet now I feel abandoned. Sigrun said while using his charm on her, making Fiona embarrassed. She shouted, No, I'm not looking for Gunther. I came here because of Lord Aben. Sigrun nodded. I know. As for Gunther, those nobles are just rich and powerful people. Kia, please go somewhere else and stop showing off your affection. The wind and snow outside still blew fiercely, covering the land in white. Jerome stood waiting in front of the mansion gate. When he saw Fiona and Sigrun, he called out loudly, Miss Fiona! Fiona said, Jerome, have you been waiting long? Due to the snowstorm, the journey here was delayed more than expected, but Jerome said, I'm glad you're still healthy. Fiona continued, We don't have much time. Let's go inside and talk more. Jerome replied, Yes, miss. And they entered the mansion. Jerome said, Welcome back to Halong. Fiona thought she hated this coldness, like the smell of winter's chill piercing straight into her nose. She thought that now Avin was no longer here. It felt like returning to her own home, where family coldness had left memories. This made her hate the cold even more. Jerome spoke up. Let me explain everything that just happened. He said, one of the dragons has appeared here. Hearing this, Fiona was suspicious. You mean one of the 3 remaining dragons? Jerome bowed his head. Yes, but what he said next was even more shocking. This time, 2 dragons appeared. Hearing this, Fiona couldn't believe her ears. She thought, what? If that's true, then Aben, before Fiona could speak, Sigrun interrupted, surely Aben wasn't captured by them. If there were 2 dragons, why wouldn't Aben know? Jerome explained, no, he wasn't captured. He actually went out to investigate them. This surprised both of them. He continued, the dragons appeared near the mountain range surrounding Halong. Perhaps that's why the number of monster attacks from the mountains has increased. Of course, the Duke has done everything he can to protect Halong, but probably alone he can't eliminate them all. He added, there's also a report that the 2 dragons once fought the Duke's ancestors. This made Fiona even more worried. She turned to Sigrun and said, Sigrun, is the dragon you once caught very intelligent? He replied, the dragon you once caught. Was it very intelligent? He replied, no, it was completely different from the monsters, he suspiciously asked her. Fiona, what do you mean by that? She only replied, nothing, but in her heart she thought there were still many complications inside. But she told Jerome that Jerome's matter. Yes, she continued excitedly, telling him about her next plan. To do that, first of all, we have to get the Crown Prince into the illegal speculation area. He frowned worriedly and asked if that was feasible. She didn't hesitate to reply, we have to try to know, right? Even so, we have someone supporting us. Very skilled, he doubted, repeating her words. Someone supporting? The scene shifted to inside the Libyan palace. Wearing a luxurious designed outfit, she exuded nobility, holding a fan in her hand. Confidently, she stepped into the room, lifted her dress, and bowed to the Crown Prince. It's an honor to meet the son of the Empire, she said. The Crown Prince raised his hand, signaling her to stand up. All right, today is a beautiful day, so let's go to the rooftop. Then he walked towards her. She smiled and nodded in agreement, following him up to the rooftop. He glanced at her with a puzzled yet pleased expression, thinking she's been obedient lately. Indeed, she's learned to obey. As soon as they reached the rooftop, she spoke first. Your Highness, have you heard that rumor? He curiously asked. What rumor? She began. I don't know for sure, but I heard there's a place where we can see spirits. In the heart of the capital. He widened his eyes in surprise, not believing it was true, and asked again. She said there's a place where people can go to see spirits. Really? Are there people who go to see those things? She waved her fan dismissively, acting weak. Oh heavens, that's a scene. Only those chosen can see. Seeing his face constantly changing, she covered her mouth with the fan and thought, quickly bait the hook here. Meanwhile, the Crown Prince put his hands in his pockets, with a sly look, muttering, only those chosen? Huh. Is this game meant for me? Then he asked again, where is that place? She stood opposite him, smiling, biting her lip inside. Honestly, I don't know. It seems only Count Isaac and Viscount O'Hell know about this. But you probably already know. Almost no one dares to tell me about it. He hurriedly comforted Livia. That's true. A flower in society like you must be treated with utmost respect. She outwardly showed a warm expression, but inside was furious, clenching her fists, thinking if she should hit him. Smiling, she replied, if the Crown Prince asks those 2, they will definitely answer, right? He nodded in agreement. Exactly, Libya. She folded her fan quickly, eyes sparkling as she said, Your Highness, you must go see it and then tell me about it. I'm very curious. He smiled slyly, looking at her as if wanting to devour her. All right then. Meanwhile, Fiona's carriage stopped in front of Sigrun's mansion. She wore a black outfit covering her from head to toe. She hurriedly got off and rushed inside with a guilty look, saying, Sorry, Sigrun. You're busy, yet I told you to come with me. He also wore a fully covered outfit like her, his voice somewhat helpless. It's okay. I can't let you go to the speculation area alone. He paused a bit and continued. Besides, do you remember I told you to be as discreet as possible? She looked up at him and replied, Of course. She quickly removed her hood, revealing brown hair she had changed, and continued. Though platinum hair is quite eye-catching, so I tried dyeing my hair like last time. I told you. What do you think? Does it look weird? His face flushed red, avoiding her gaze, hurriedly pulling his hood back on. She continued teasing him. Right, hiding your face like this. Then she added, compared to your hair color, your looks stand out much more. He said nothing and quickly walked toward the door while she followed behind, wiping her forehead, saying, you really are an expert at killing the mood. Then they got into the carriage together. After arriving, both got off. She looked ahead, silently admiring. The mansion looks more ordinary than I thought. Both followed a rather elegant man wearing a mask, so they didn't know who he was, as he led them inside the mansion. The corridors on both sides were decorated with candles burning bright red, creating a harmonious atmosphere. The sound of steady footsteps echoed. She walked while looking around, then whispered to him just loud enough for both to hear. How do they manage those spirits, I wonder? He replied, I don't know either, as the man leading them opened the main door, letting light shine inside, causing both to involuntarily shout and scream inside, making the quiet space outside suddenly become lively. Suddenly, on the stands, the wolf spirit was knocked down by a muscular demon beast with a human shape, lying sprawled on the floor outside the iron frame. The commander loudly gave orders to the wolf spirit. All right, quickly get up and see. Above the stands, the guests, each wearing a mask with different designs, kept making noise, cheering and encouraging. The commander outside the iron frame relentlessly swung his whip mercilessly at the wolf spirit. He ordered it to stand up and shouted, I told you to move! Stand apart from the crowd in a corner. Fiona and Sigrun stood next to each other, whispering. She spoke first. This is really dangerous. G.H., he agreed, replying, it really is dangerous. Just as she finished speaking, the wolf spirit lying on the floor, having been hit multiple times, angrily stood up, growling and lunging to bite the commander's arm. Fresh blood continuously flowing from his arm. The commander, in pain, screamed miserably, but no one came to help him. He shouted loudly, I am the one who raised you. The two people standing above frowned at each other. She spoke first. Looking at how uncontrollable that demon beast is, sooner or later an accident will happen. He hesitated for a moment, then looked at her and added, Fiona, the scale here is even bigger than imagined. Also, he looked at the background of some nobles gathered here. She leaned forward seriously and said, with only the strength of the Halen family and the knights under him, it would be too difficult to overthrow these people. He also added, if we only capture humans, what if by bad luck some demon beasts escape during the chaos? That would be even more dangerous. Horrified, she nodded. That makes sense. Then fell into deep thought. When only Sigrun and the Halen family cooperate, bad rumors spread immediately. If we want to handle this neatly, it might be better to involve some neutral nobles. Suddenly, he pointed forward and called Fiona. Over there, the crown prince is there. She looked toward the crowded guests cheering below and asked, where exactly? I don't see him, he said. She looked a bit lower. It seems he is going inside somewhere. She wanted to shout when she saw the crown prince. There, why is he going inside? He also looked in that direction and said, let's see. It's probably not for a good reason. He is leading. Behind him was the arena owner following into the room below, surrounded by fierce demon beasts locked up, constantly growling, looking very scary. He glanced over each demon beast, angrily shouted, what is this? Only these types? Where are the high-level demon beasts you mentioned last time? The arena owner standing behind scratched his head and quickly bowed. Sorry. He was unhappy hearing that. Useless bunch. Always slow. He darkened his face, gritted his teeth angrily, thinking, you idiot, did you think preparing that was easy? But actually, it's lucky the crown prince likes my arena. Just give some money and those guys will turn a blind eye. This arena is illegal, so I can please him to get by. He met the person, bowed 90 degrees, and replied, I will immediately prepare something more interesting. After that, no more information could be obtained. Fiona and Sigrun left there, got on the carriage to return. The sound of horse hooves clattered as they departed. Both changed clothes, then continued discussing the earlier matter. She said, I see the business scale is much bigger than imagined. He sat opposite and nodded in agreement with her words. She relaxed, no longer maintaining her image, leaning back in the carriage, arms crossed over her head, legs crossed, constantly thinking, bringing the crown prince into that group has expanded their business scale. Looks like I miscalculated. At this point, I have to borrow strength from other nobles. She thought of Lady Libya first, but she shook her head. Still can't borrow her strength. So after returning, she arranged to have afternoon tea with Marquis Seren. After sitting for a while, he noticed she was distracted. He lightly tapped his teacup against hers on the table, making a sound which startled her back to reality. She hurriedly apologized and said, "I have a matter that will interest you, Marquis." He looked at her with a bright smile and replied, "I have no intention of siding with His Royal Highness the Prince." She held the teacup and explained, "I also don't intend to ask you for that." He raised his watch and asked, "Then for what reason did the lady come here?" "I hope this moment will be an interesting time, Miss Chow." "You're angry, thinking, why? Didn't you just say it outright?" "It's because I don't want to waste time being polite." "Has the Marquis lately found it difficult to manage the treasury?" He immediately thought of the magnificent royal palace surrounded by beautiful landscapes. "Both the Emperor and Empress live quite luxuriously." He replied indifferently, "There's no easy job in this world." She continued, "That's true, but recently it seems like many people are making the Marquis tired, right?" He coldly let out, "Miss Fiona, this is the first time I've seen a young lady who doesn't fit in with the upper class like Miss Fiona." Her face flushed as if holding back anger. She frankly said, "Sorry, please return to the main topic, no matter what." "I also find beating around the bush a waste of time," she said, pulling a file from behind and added, "Don't beat around the bush anymore in the future." Then she placed it in front of him. He held the file, staring, but didn't open it to look inside. Coldly, he said, "Honestly, I've received many invitations from noble young ladies, such as invitations to the theater or tea parties." He nodded in agreement and smiled, continuing, "But in this grand mansion, Miss Libya, who was holding a cup of tea, sighed and said, 'Miss Fiona, do you know the Crown Prince has been spending lavishly on entertainment venues lately?'" She repeated her words. "Entertainment venues." She calmly brushed her hair and replied, "Yes, although I don't care much, unfortunately, my Priscilla family is involved in this matter." She sat upright facing her and replied, "Yes, right? If we consider modern society, this is similar to tycoons spending on prostitutes and splurging in bars." She imagined the Crown Prince holding a glass of red wine, laughing loudly, throwing money everywhere, surrounded by girls clapping excitedly at his stories. Libya stood up, approached, and lightly touched her shoulder, saying, "Miss Fiona, I support you." "You know that, right?" Her eyes sparkled as she smiled sincerely. "Don't worry, I've prepared everything." Outside the mansion where she had come with Sigrun the other day, the sky was gray and raindrops fell one after another. Inside, it was noisy and bustling, separated from the outside. She stood next to him, headache pounding, saying, "It's deafening. The match is over, but they keep shouting." Suddenly, a guard came over and whispered in her ear, reporting that the arrangement of people at the entrance and exit was settled. Outside, a long line of her guards stood neatly waiting for orders. She nodded to signal she understood, then turned to him and said the next match was the main event of the day. He looked at her and replied, "Is that so?" On the stands, the MC spread his two arms wide, opening with the familiar phrase, "Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for waiting. Today we will introduce to you a monster never before revealed." He gestured, directing everyone's gaze to the monster, struggling and roaring fiercely inside the iron cage. Then he walked closer, unlocked the door with a click, and loudly said, "The monster was found in the Deadland." She startled, leaning forward to see the monster more clearly. Next to her, the guard also looked shocked, covering his mouth and saying, "The monster from the Deadland? These fools." She quickly added, "Look, it's a fierce monster species." Below, the guests panicked, including a blonde lady with her hair tied high who bravely stood up, covering her mouth and asking, "Is it safe?" The man sitting in front confidently replied, "There's a magical barrier protecting us, so it should be fine." The monster in front of everyone kept attacking the barrier, while the bright blue light from the barrier continuously radiated, dazzling everyone. She stood high above, intently watching the monster attack with booming sounds constantly emitted. He clasped his hands behind his head, sitting like watching a play, and said, "It's still solid now." But she quickly objected. "In a moment, the barrier will be broken." She hurriedly removed her mask and outer coat to confirm with the guard beside her. "Did you arrange our people at the entrance and exit properly?" After hearing him reply with a yes, "You said you had arranged our people at the entrance properly, right?" After hearing you respond with a word, "Yes." Then she immediately gave the order. "If so, then let's deploy the plan early." She raised her hand. Immediately, a blue lightning streak flashed by, causing everyone sitting below to buzz and whisper, "Huh, lightning." After receiving her order, he immediately went out and ordered his subordinates to send the signal. She stood on the second floor and shouted an order to the guards outside to take them all away immediately for me. Below, her guards opened the door and one by one handcuffed all the guests sitting there according to her orders. The other guests panicked, looking for a way to escape, making a lot of noise. One guest shouted, "Why is this happening? Where are you taking us?" The arena owner was quicker and had already escaped, hiding behind a pillar observing the situation. He cursed angrily. "Damn it. Why did everything turn out like this?" He was sitting in the corner, and upon seeing the crown prince's figure, he spoke up to question His Highness. "What is going on?" He also looked back at the arena owner, who was equally shocked, and replied, "Damn it, I don't know either." Then he sat down, covering his face with one hand, grinding his teeth, and thought, "Who the hell is behind this? If I catch him, I won't let him off easily." Suddenly he was startled. When he saw someone with a covered head approaching, the monster thought he had gone crazy. Why? Could someone dare enter the barrier in this situation? After clearly seeing the man's face, he widened his eyes. Unexpectedly, it was that illegitimate son from the wild. Suddenly, the guards kicked the door and rushed in where the crown prince and the arena owner were hiding. He ordered his subordinates over there to capture them. The two looked at each other in panic. Then he lunged at the arena owner's body, shouting loudly, "Give me the key." After getting the key, he dodged a few guards and ran out desperately. Behind him, the guards also chased after him, shouting loudly, "Don't let him escape! Catch him!" He ran outside while thinking angrily, "Damn it! It's all because of that illegitimate wild son. Do you think I'll let you off?" He was furious and kicked the door, imprisoning the fierce monsters, then grinned slyly. "Haha, here's something useful." He stood in front of the iron cage, holding the monsters, panting heavily while swinging the bunch of keys, jingling in front of them, and asked, "Do you want freedom? I'll let you out." He inserted the key into the lock and opened it with a click, his eyes sinister as he opened the door for the monsters and said,